Hey all, thanks for tuning in to the second episode of Chaplain on the Spectrum. As those of you who watched last week's video know, my name is Joseph or Joe. Like I tell people, just don't call me late for church. But yeah, no, I'm Joe. I have ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is overlapped into ADHD, and I'm autistic. Level 1, high functioning, I'm autistic. But I've titled this message Masks and Masking, hence why I'm wearing this guy right here. I'm not worried about spewing droplets on my sheets or my walls and inhaling saliva carrying COVID through the air and getting it that way. But today in church, particularly, as I greet in the doors, I saw a few people wearing masks, and I asked one of the deacons, should I go ahead and put on a mask just out of courtesy? And she follows me on Facebook. She knows what I do. And she said, well, you're a chaplain now, so you should wear a mask. And I thought that was interesting because there was a certain sense of responsibility that kicked in. Not that, oh no, you need to do that. But it's like, yeah, no, you're a chaplain. Like, you need to be doing something. And that was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that. And so I titled this Mask and Masking, and I decided, what better to talk about than, what masking is, which is something that people that I have do, and it's something that people with PTSD do. And for a long time, I did it without not realizing what masking was. And so basically, masking is just that you're wearing a mask, you're not your normal self. Realizing the deficits or maybe the differences that your condition might present in normal social interaction and just day-to-day life. The person, in my case, on the autism spectrum, will do things, whether it be through copying or whether it be through things, input that was given by another party, will act in a way that doesn't come naturally. Now, I spoke to a therapist at one point about this after discovering it, and what she said is that while masking can help maybe to initiate a conversation, it can help to nail a job interview, doing it too much can be harmful. And I'm not going to try to make some analogy for wearing masks because I'm vaccinated. I'm going to have to get my booster shot and continue to wear a mask as a chaplain at a hospital. It's just what I've got to do. And I'm fine with it. I have no problem. But masking for the person with ASD, what that can do is lead to an increase of anxiety. Self-awareness can then turn into self-consciousness, and the person can start to beat up on themselves. And that's something that I've been guilty of before. And I was actually doing it this past week a little bit, where you wear too much covering, and then that leads to just basically feeling guilty for something that you didn't create. And so that's something that I have to navigate on a regular basis. One thing that's really helped me is using CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. This is a book a therapist loaned to me a while back, which I probably need to get back at this point, called Overcoming Anxiety and Depression on the Autism Spectrum, a self-help guide using CBT. And what that is essentially is it's using behavioral thought process. It's counterintuiting the way you think, and it goes through what's called an ABC model: activating incident, belief, and consequence. Belief not in the sense of, I have a religious or spiritual belief, which I do, but belief in the sense of I think a certain way that is not helpful to where I need to get, and I need to find ways to combat that. And the ABC model is activating incident. There was an actual activating incident. That could be something happened to you in your childhood, or that could be, in my case, specifically, your brain neurologically is designed a certain way, and that's created certain challenges you have to overcome. And so your belief about this situation will then dictate how you respond. CBT is not for everybody, but it's helped me quite a bit, and it can do good with the help of a licensed professional, which I'm not. But I wouldn't discourage anybody who is seeing a therapist to present the CBT or just something similar, recommending or asking about it to a mental health professional, which I'm not yet, anyways. And that goes back to what another topic I want to look at. Going to the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Manual, Volume 5, which they use here in the States to diagnose under autism spectrum disorder, there's 3 basic categories that are listed, and each of those has a set of symptoms you have to hit. Now, on the first one, it's persistent deficits in social communication and social interaction across multiple contexts, as manifested by the following: currently or by history. Now, that's really important because it says persistent deficits. That's not a total lack. That just means that there's an inhibition or a lack of what's normal in these social and communicative contexts. And then it says currently or by history. And generally, you need to show symptoms by the age of 2 of what I have, ASD, in order to get a diagnosis. And so, as somebody who's learned to do certain things over time and has to go back, I don't necessarily consistently show certain deficits, but those are things that have been persistent in my younger life to the point to where it is clinically concerning. And obviously having a diagnosis only helped me to get the help that I need. And that leads to another important point I wanted to make here, which is when I started my journey of ordination, which I'm not ordained, but that's the journey I'm on. Chaplaincy was one of the first things that I wanted to pursue, specifically in the context of mental health, because I felt like the church hadn't necessarily dealt with mental health issues the way they should historically. I felt like they weren't as equipped, and I wanted, as I stated in my previous video, wanted to combine the Master of Divinity with a Master of Arts in mental health counseling. And I had talked to the pastor of my local church about that, First Methodist, when we were discussing entering the process, entering seminary. And one of the things she said to me, she said, "I don't doubt that you're called, or that you have a concern for people, or you want to do God's work and help others. However, sometimes you tend to lack empathy in the way you converse. She said, it's not a matter of you not caring, because I know you do. It just comes across that you're not giving the other person their proper say." And I kind of laughed a little bit, because she had previously told me that she hadn't done a lot of research on the autism spectrum. It's not her fault. It's just not everybody's an expert on a specific condition that some people have, which she doesn't need to be. But I told her that, you pretty much just pegged one of the first things people take notice of in autistic people. And what it reads here in the DSM-5, under that section A I just read a moment ago, is number 1, deficits. Not a complete lack, mind you, but some impairment. Deficits in social, emotional reciprocity, ranging, for example, from abnormal social approach and failure of normal back and forth conversation to reduce sharing of interests, emotions, or affect. Failure to initiate or respond to social interactions. Now, in the past, what I would do is I would just go up to people and start talking about something I'm interested in, or like ask them. And what I asked them about, specific interests that I have. And it would appear that I was just hogging the conversation and I wasn't concerned with the other person. But what it was I genuinely didn't know how to interact with people. And I had to learn it more manually through practice. And, it was great that we had that conversation, because that's prepared me for the journey ahead. And that's taught me to be more consciously empathetic in areas where certain things don't come naturally. I found that most people are generally only concerned with another party to the extent that they can relate to them already. And things people learn at a young age are what carry over into what we perceive as empathy. So I think empathy is limited based off of a person's upbringing, but that's a whole another thing I have about how human beings develop, and I don't need to get into that right now. But really, what that ended up doing was it helped to prepare me for the journey ahead. And I just did my first shadowing. I did my first courses at the hospital this upcoming week. But what I did this week on my day off was I was able to go up. They asked me to come in and do some shadowing. The first person was very basic. It was just going in. They wanted somebody to pray with them. They'd already prayed by themselves in the morning, but they just wanted the chaplain. It was a simple prayer, help increase this person's faith and bring them comfort, in Jesus' name. They told us they were Christian. Great. The second person was rather difficult, and I can't say names. I don't want to specify anything about the condition, just due to the fact that confidentiality, medical stuff. But it took like an hour, and there were some issues other than the obvious that we were looking at, and it really showed me the importance of learning by listening rather than presumption, and really just standing back and getting an idea of what's going on. And what I thought was interesting is I was able to pick up on things that the other chaplain wasn't able to, or just remember things and communicate that to the nurse, which was information that they weren't getting. And it said a lot about teamwork. It taught me a lot about listening, and I'm just looking forward to the journey ahead. And if you guys want to keep following along with me, I'd be more than happy to have you along on my journey. God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.